theyeshiva.net.
Welcome everybody, Baruchim Abayim. I guess I could welcome myself too, after our break. We usually don't have a shiur on Erev Shabbos on Friday, since it's Erev Shabbos Friday, so I chose, here I made a copy of two pieces, two shtiklach. One is from the Sfas Emes, and one is from the Moir Einayim, on the Parshas of these weeks, Tazria and Metzora. I hope we'll be able to go through both of them. The first is the Sfas Emes, and the second is the Moir Einayim. Chronologically, it's the other way, but the second one is a little more elaborate and complex. I thought we'll first start with the Sfas Emes. This is from the Sfas Emes, Parshas Tazria, from the year Tafresh Lamed Aleph. Even though some of you may know it, but it's good to reiterate, especially there may be a few who don't. The Sfas Emes was the second Rebbe of Ger, of the Hasidic dynasty of Ger. The first one was his grandfather, known as the Chidushei Harim. They called him Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir of Ger. He was the first Rebbe of Ger. He was a student of the Kotzker Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Morgenstern. And after his passing, he became the first Admur, the first master of the Hasidic dynasty of Gur, which is not far from Warsaw. It's a short trip from Warsaw in Poland. The Chidushei Harim lost all of his children in his lifetime, more than 10 children, including his son, who was the father of the Sfas Emes. And the father of the Sfas Emes died young, so the Chidushei Harim raised his grandson, the Sfas Emes, whose name was Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh Leib. When the Chidushei Harim passed away, the Sfas Emes, his grandson, even though he was quite a very young man, he succeeded him as the second Rebbe of the dynasty of Ger. And his Torah is compiled in the work Sfas Emes. You have Sfas Emes on Shas, and you have Sfas Emes on Chumash. The Sfas Emes would say Torah on Shabbos or Yom Tov, and I think after Shabbos he wrote down very short, brief, and pretty cryptic notes of his Torah, and that was published in the work Sfas Emes, and that's why it's a hard work, because it's very, very brief. It's really notes that he wrote down for himself to memorize, I think, or just to have it on file, and then it was printed. So each paragraph is very, very brief, concise, often very cryptic. Most importantly, it's very hard to understand Sfas Emes if a person doesn't have a thorough appreciation of a lot of the fundamental ideas of Pnimiyus HaTorah, of Torah HaKabbalah, the teachings of all the teachings of Chassidus. So this is one piece from the Sfas Emes, Parshas Tazria. The Sfas Emes passed away, Hei Shvat, Tofresh Samach Hei, 1905. And then he was succeeded by his son, who's known as the Imrei Emes. Rabbi Avraham Mordechai was his name, Rabbi Avraham Mordechai. And he passed away in 1948, and he was succeeded by his son, Rabbi Yisrael, the Beis Yisrael, passed away in 1977, was succeeded by his brother, Rabbi Simcha Binim, the Lev Simcha. When he passed away, I think in 93 or 94, he was succeeded by his brother. Beis Yisrael had 3 children, and they all, first the Beis Yisrael, then his brother, the Lev Simcha, and then his brother, the Pnei Menachem. And when he passed away, his nephew took over, son of the Lev Simcha, who was the present Ger Rebbe, Rabbi Yankala, who was just here for a few weeks in Monsey. Okay. And he focuses, so just a little history, it's good to have the historical context. So everybody knows that both the Parsha and Tazria and Metzora deal with primarily, not completely, but primarily with tzaras, with the symptoms of what we call leprosy. I say what we call because it's not exactly leprosy. Leprosy is a skin disease. The symptoms of the Metzora described in Parshas Tazria and Metzora, in addition to the fact that you had leprosy on clothes and leprosy in homes, which is completely disconnected to the term leprosy, But even leprosy, in terms of a skin disease, the symptoms in Parshas Tazria are not the same symptoms. They are both. They're similar in the sense that leprosy represents a disconfiguration of the skin and the color of the skin and so forth. So it's translated as leprosy, but it's not the most accurate translation because tsaras was really unique symptoms that we don't see in the contemporary world. Yeah. No, I'm saying leprosy. But the symptoms of Tazria you don't see today. There's a whole famous Ramban about this. Why? A long Ramban, and the Rambam also in Hilchos Tumas Tsaras. When it comes to Chumash, the Chumash you could pass. Thank you very much. When it comes to the cleansing of this symptom, so the impurities are discussed in Parshas Tazria. The cleansing is discussed next week in Parshas Metzora. Most years, Tazria and Metzora are connected to each other. This year is a leap year, it's a Shana Muberes, it's an extra month, so Tazria and Metzora are disconnected from each other. But usually in the Shana Pshutas, when there's no leap years, Tazria and Metzora are one. So the way Metzora begins is, Zois tia Teiras HaMetzora b'yom ta'arasai. The day that he becomes pure, this shall be the Torah, the law of the Metzora. He's brought to the Kohen, and the Kohen has to go out and see that the symptoms are gone. As long as the symptoms were still intact, the main symptom, of course, was that part of the skin developed into a white patch, and the hair also was transformed from black to white. That was the first symptom of tsaras. Of course, it had to be a certain type of white, which Chazal discuss. The pasuk says Sa'es, Sapachas, Baheres, Dalad, Maris, Nagoyim, different shades of white. So the Kohen had to determine all of this. And when he saw that the symptoms were gone, as long as the symptoms were not gone, the state of impurity was intact, and the Metzora was also living outside of the camp. He couldn't be within the community. There was a special place where he would be. He would be safe and secure, and they made sure he had food and everything, but he was alone. Bodad Yeshev. When the Kohen goes out and sees that the symptoms are gone, so now starts a process of cleansing, of Tara. So the Torah says 2 birds have to be taken, and then there's another very interesting thing that's brought in. Ve'etz erez, which is cedar wood. Cedar wood. Then there's shni soilas, which is basically a thread. It's called crimson. It's a scarlet red thread. Ve'ezov, which was similar to the color that came from a tailas, a particular type of worm, crimson. And then ve'ezov. Ezov is usually translated as a hyssop, which is a certain type of herb. Some argue with that translation, but it's basically an herb that grows, and he had to take that as well. And he would dip the wood of the cedar and the thread which was dyed with the crimson red scarlet color and the hyssop, and he would dip it into the blood that was from the bird that was slaughtered, and he sprinkled it on the person who was a Metzora, and the person was a leper 7 times, and this was the beginning of the cleansing process. When it was all gone, and he could come back in. So Rashi asks, why eitz erez? Why cedar? What's up with cedar? From everything, I mean, you're looking for something to dip. So Rashi says, because the leprosy, part of it had to do with arrogance. Now, what's the connection to erez? The erez, we say in Tehillim, Tzadik Katama Yifrach, Ke'erez Balavon in Yizga. He blossoms like a cedar in Lebanon. The cedar tree is considered one of the tallest, proudest, most powerful, strongest trees. Very, very impressive. Its height leaves an impression. It towers over above all of its trees, representing a sense of superiority and royalty and richness and power. That's the erez. The Ezov, Rashi says, is it's a very, very low bush. The hyssop is very, very low. In other words, the contrast. It's a contrast to the cedar. So Rashi says, that's why the Torah says to take this. Why? Because ma takanose v'yisrape, I'm quoting Rashi. What does this person need to do to heal? In the beginning of Metzora, Shni Selaz ve'ezev, Mata kanose v'yisrape, right in the beginning of Parshas Tazria. What should he do to heal? Yashpil atzmei migavose k'teilasu k'ezev. He has to humble himself from his arrogance, like a worm, k'teilas, and an ezev, like a hyssop bush. That's why these two plants were used in the cleansing of the tzaras. So that's the quote to understand the Sfas Emes's opening words. B'Rashi, Eitz Erez shenizgah, the cedar tree, because he was arrogant. Ve'ezov, the hyssop, sheyashpil atzmo, he should humble himself. V'lama, Eitz Erez, Eitz el hakapara, shezeh ha'ira al mashachata v'kilkel. Apparently, why is it, the Sfas Emes is asking a question. I understand why the Torah would want you to use an Ezev, because now it's important for him to introduce humility. Why are you bringing in the Erez? The Erez is something he has to get away from. When you're using an Erez, you want him not to learn from the Erez. He was like an Erez, and now he's going into the world of Ezev, from arrogance, from haughtiness to humility. So why, when he's atoning for his flaw, when he's trying to cleanse himself from his sin, do you bring in the cedar, which actually represents the chet, the kilkul, the moral deterioration of this person? If you wish, you can at least homiletically apply the famous quote of the Chazal, Ein kateger, nasa saneger. The prosecutor doesn't become the lawyer. The Erez is the prosecutor, the cedar tree. This is what he's getting away from. This is what he's stepping away from. Why are you bringing this in? It's like, well, you want to remind him of the negative. The point is the Ezev, not the Erez. He was an Erez. Now, people shout the way you learn the Rashi. For the Sfas Emes, people shout the way you learn the Rashi is that this is part of the tutorial. In other words, it's part of the lecture that the Kohen has to give the Metzora. It's part of the shiur that the Metzora has to go through. That there's an Erez and there's an Ezev, and your problem was you were like an Erez, and now you have to become like an Ezev. Right? Ein chanami. That's true that you have to explain this to him. But what we see from here is that you need the Ezev for the cleansing. You need the Ezev for the kapara. It's not just you need the Ezev to understand how to get kapara. Part of the cleansing of the Metzora was through not the Ezev, was through the Erez. You need the Ezev for the Tara and also the Erez for the kapara. That's what he's saying. Lama eitz el kapara. It seems like that's part of the atonement. The explanation is ki hashiflus tzarich liyas hayidei ze atzmai shenizgah. Because there's no Ezev without the Erez. You can't have the experience of the Ezev, which is humility, without the Erez. The humility has to come from that itself, shenizgah. The humility must come from the experience that he felt so arrogant. Shetzarich leida, a person has to know. Af sheyiyeh mashahu. He may be who he is. Person may be who he is in a very positive sense. He may be great, talented, and resourceful, and full of accomplishment and virtue. But kishenizgah, the moment he becomes arrogant, the moment he looks in the mirror and feels that he ought to be arrogant, he has with what? Yeshloi. He has with what lehizgah, what to be arrogant? If a person is experiencing that feeling, then he must be aware of how lowly he is. Why? Chayri is saying this person his taka great. Well, that's not pshat. He's lying to himself. He's deceiving himself. He may taka be great, and therefore there is a sense of geis, a sense of haughtiness. It says kikol haratzin me Hashem yizbarach lahagia loza leida ki hakol mimenu yizbarach ukeshechaser hakol hevel. The entire ratzin, the entire will of Hashem, what a person should reach for is to know that everything comes from Hashem. And if this is missing, is hakol hevel, everything is in vain. When a person is missing this essential idea, this essential conviction, that everything he has, including his talents and his strength and his resources and his success and his greatness and his virtues, whatever it is he's essentially a conduit for the divine energy. It's a gift that comes from the Rebbeinu Shalom. Hakol Memeni Yisbarach. If he's missing this, Hakol Hevel. Not because he doesn't have a lot. Ultimately, it's all vanity. And therefore, he truly becomes a very lowly person. He has to realize that at that moment, he becomes the lowliest person when he feels truly arrogant and superior to others. V'adoini aviskeni moiri v'Rabbi zeichet tzaddik livracha l'chaya elam haba. My grandfather, my teacher, the Chidushei Harim, Omar once said, B'shem harav zechrona livracha mepshischa. My grandfather, Chidushei Harim, said from the Rebbe Reb Simcha Binim of Pshischa, Al Masha Kosov, on what we say, or Al Masha what we say every morning, Magbia Shvalim, Umashpil Geim. You remember where we say this? Very good, Lenny. Thank you for coming to the rescue. Give a minute. So the expression is Magbia Shvalim Admarim, right before Shemina Esra, and the bracha after Kriyat Shema. Starts off Emes v'yatzav v'nachin. So middle of Ezras, we say as follows: Ram v'nisa gadol v'noira, mashpil geim adei aretz, umagbia shvalim adei marim. What does this mean? Mashpil geim. Geim means like kigoi go, from the word gaiva, arrogant, haughty, superior. Mashpil geim. He takes the geim, those who are haughty, arrogant, narcissistic, exalted, feel superior to everybody, and humbles them, adei aretz, till the ground. And the contrary, umakbiya shvalim, and he takes the shvalim, those who are humble, and he lifts them up, admarim, all to the heavens. Then moitzi asirim paidanavim. And this is what we say right before Shemini Esrei, this contrast. A person thinks he's on top of the world, arrogant, mashpil geim adei aretz. On the contrary, sometimes a person feels shuffle, without anything. You should know Magbiya Shvalim Admar. So he said, I heard from my grandfather, who said from the Simcha Binim of Pshischa. We say Magbiya Shvalim Mashpil Geim. An interesting question. Meyachesh Magbiya HaShuffle Lama Mashpil Kedei LaHagbiya. If you're saying a blanket statement, Mashpil Geim and Magbiya Shvalim. No, so once he's Magbiya the shuffle, so now the shuffle went up. So what happens next? Mashpil, he goes down. So what happens when you come down? He picks you up again. So what is this? Like a Ferris wheel? You go down, so he's going to pick you up. Oh, you're up. Time to go down. Well, what's going on? Right? Mamish, that's what it is. A fast Ferris wheel. A roller coaster better. A roller coaster. Huh? Yeah, you're juggling. What's the point? Magbiya shvalim admarim. Fine, say good. Mashpil geim adei aretz. No, now I'm aretz, so I go back up. Oh, I'm up, I go back down. That's what he asked. Ma'achesh magbiya shafel. Since you're telling me that he lifts up those who are humble, is lama mashpil. So why is he now humbling them? Kidei lagbiyam, just to pick them up again. So I heard from my grandfather, who said from Rabbinim of Pshischa. The pshat is shemagbiya shvalim, sheyishoyer shafel afshehu mugba. Magbiya shvalim doesn't only mean he lifts up those who are shvalim. They remain shvalim. Magbiya shvalim admarim, he lifts up the humble ones until the heavens. What does it mean he lifts them up? He lifts them up and they remain uplifted as shvalim, as humble people. They don't go down. Magmashpil geim adei aretz, or magbiya shvalim admarim. It's not pshat, he lifts up the humble ones, so now they're up there, they become arrogant. Then taki go down again. Magbiya shvalim, that they should remain shvalim even when they're in the heavens. So it's completely two separate things. That's what magbiya shvalim means. What does this mean? V'zemi shebe'emes. If a person is so high, how is he a shuffle? So v'zeh, this applies misha be'emes, a person who truthfully understands that afshe agbiya isa, even if God lifts him up to the highest places. In other words, sometimes a person looks at their life and you mamish, you're a success story, there's no question. You're on top of the world. Yeda as alvisin, you should know ki hu mimenu yizbarach. This person who truthfully understands, yes, but this is all him. This is all. I am a conduit for God's energy. This is Hashem doing it. Then that's the greatest Hagbah. That's actually what makes you so gavoya. What makes a person so tall is the fact that he's a shuffle. That's what makes the person so great. That's what allows the person to be so great. And that is what constitutes his greatness. It's not just he's saying that even if you're great, you should know it's not from you. No. That knowledge is your greatest greatness.
You have to learn Cheshvelis now.
The moment you have this knowledge, then you become the greatest person. Why? Why do you think you become the greatest? Because now you could be a conduit for infinity. Now Hashem could shine through you. Now the ego doesn't become a blockage. So he says, Hareyu mugbe b'yidi yasei. V'chein kasev, that's what Shlomo the Navi says, Al yishalel chacham b'chachmasai, gibur b'gvurasai, kiyim b'zois yishalel. A person who fears God, this is basically what the Navi is saying. V'chein, now the other way, mashpil geim. He humbles the arrogant. It doesn't only mean a person who's arrogant gets humbled. That too, but it means something deeper. The lowliest thing you can experience in life is to be arrogant. That's the low. You can't get more lowly. Why? Why? Because you're cutting yourself off from yourself. You lose your true I. You cut yourself off from the source of your own life. The Gemara says in the beginning of Masechus Saita that Hashem says about a balgaiv, an arrogant person, we can't live in the same place. We can't live in the same roof. This means the arrogant person, Hashem says, I could live with everybody, but I can't live under the same roof with you. So that means he can't live with God. So what does it mean he can't live with God? It means he can't live with himself. He can't live with his own source of life. The shayrish hachiyus of everything is Hashem. Hashem says, I can't live with you means this person has to live like in a bubble, detached. Detached. So the greatest humiliating experience in life is that I'm arrogant. That I detach myself from my source. That I don't understand who I really am. They say a story about the Heilige Ruzhin, Rabbi Saul of Ruzhin, that he was once traveling and he came to a place and there was a fellow there, a very, very wealthy and respectable person who came out to greet him. And he said that the custom is that all the prominent people who come to town stay in my house. They stay in my house, so I hope you'll also stay in my house. But in reality, he chose to stay by somebody else. So this person came into the Bistro of Vision. He says, I don't understand. I have a beautiful house. I'm very hospitable. Everybody respects me. I'm considered one of the most prominent people in the city. The person you stayed by, Taka has a nice house, but his yir shamayim, his fear of heaven is nicht as mefukbuk. It's not so. There's different opinions about it. It's not so pashut. I don't understand why you would choose his house over my house. So he said, Ich hab sich gelernt from the Meibishten. I'm trying to emulate God. It says in Parshas Tazria, we're soon going to learn, Hashoichin itam b'soich t'moisam. Hashem dwells with the Jewish people in the midst of their purity. As Chazal say, Rashi brings, Afal pi shetmeim hem shchinas yishayir b'soichem. Even when they're impure, my divine presence is there. When it comes to arrogance, he says, I can't live in the same place. So we see Hashem, he could go to a house that has some issues. But to go to a place of arrogance, he says, I can't live there. So he says, that's why I chose that home over this home. Okay. The person got the lesson of his life. So what's the point here? Because what does arrogance mean? Arrogance doesn't mean a person is satisfied. That's not arrogance. Arrogance means the person replaces God in their own mind. I become this sense of arrogance, of haughtiness. I'm filled with myself. And I don't realize who I am. I'm an expression of the infinite light. So the most exalted experience in life is to be humble. That's when you become the greatest person in the world. the most humiliating and humbling experience in life is, more than anything else, is to be arrogant. It's the most embarrassing thing. Why? Because everything else, I have this flaw, I have a problem, I have a challenge, but I'm not cut off from my source. Here, I'm cut off from my source, because what is the definition of real arrogance? Me, me, me. And the truth of me is that I'm an expression of the oneness of Hashem. And that's why Hashem says, with this person I can't live in the same roof, because it's mutually exclusive. Because this person says, only me, ich, I, that sense of arrogance. So Mele, it becomes mutually exclusive from his perspective. This also says in Zohar, the Zohar says, Mandu Rav hu ze'er. Chuli. The end of the Zohar is, it says, whoever is Rav, meaning he thinks he's great, he's small. And he who's small is great. So what does it mean? It's not pshat only. If you think you're big, you're really not big. If you think you're small, you're big. The vart is, that is what makes a person Rav. The sense of Ze'er turns you into the greatest Rav, the greatest of the world. Why? Because your greatness could now reflect ultimate greatness. Divine greatness. You become a conduit for infinity. On the contrary, if the person is Rav on their own, they detach themselves from the source of greatness, so then it becomes like a little Zair. An illustration. A person is walking in the street. And there's a leaf on the tree. And the leaf, you ever have conversations with leaves on trees in your own mind sometimes, yeah? And the leaf has a conversation with you, and the leaf says, I'm jealous. You walk where you want. I'm here connected to this tree by shackles. This is a prison. My greatest dream in life is if I could just detach myself and I'm free to explore the world. I can travel to New Zealand. I can travel to Hong Kong. I can travel to the South America, to the Africas. I can explore the world. A freie Mensch, a free person, a free leaf. And what happens? The leaf works very, very hard, and after a lot of work, detaches itself from the tree, falls down to the ground, starts rolling. Mechaya. Down this street, Segate, Seflist. And then the leaf ends up on the sewage, on the sewage pipe. It plugs the sewage pipe. Poi tehei kvurasai, poi nitman. What's the mistake of this leaf? The mistake of this leaf is he's detaching himself from his source of life. Before, he was part of a beautiful tree. And now he becomes a lifeless, dead leaf. He can't live outside of the tree. The independence is not a blessing. The independence is a curse. It's like a person saying, it's like an arm saying, when I'll detach myself from this stupid brain that's controlling me, then I'll be free. When you detach yourself from your brain, you become a lifeless piece of flesh. Now you're part of an extraordinary organism. This is a mashal to understand all of life. The whole world is that way. There's an organism. The Avos Reb says that the olam is a guf chai. It's one big organism. We look at our body is just a microcosm of the whole universe, is one big guf. And there's the brain, there's the consciousness, there's the essence. When somebody cultivates a sense of shiflus, what's pshat shiflus? Shiflus doesn't mean humility in the sense that I'm nothing, I'm valueless. No, that everything I have is really divine. So now, this is nothing greater than this. On the contrary, is the exact opposite. Magbiya shvalim admorim. They never come down, they stay up. Mashpil geim adeyaretz. The ways Magbiya shvalim is, they remain shvalim. Even when they're in morim, they're shvalim. Because they know who they really are. V'chein, mi sheyedeya shahakol me'Hashem yizbarach v'davak b'shoyer shachayis harei urav. If he knows everything is from Hashem and he remains connected to the source of the life, then he's in the greatest place. Ki bevadai eina mechuven liyos adam anav al yedei dimyon sheker. It's obvious that humility in Judaism doesn't mean that you start becoming delusional, even if it's false. If a person is tall, what does it mean to be an anav? I'm really short. And if I'm smart, I say I'm dumb. And if I'm gorgeous, I say I'm ugly. And if I'm successful, I say I'm a loser. That's not anava. That's called stupidity, or he calls it dimyon sheker. It's Bashat Sheker. What if a person is talented? What if a person is resourceful? What if a person is creative? What if a person has tremendous talents? Let's take Moshe. Moshe, it says that he was Anav Ma'od Mikol Adam Asher Pnei Adam. He was the humblest person from every person on earth. If you touch Anava meaning, you look at yourself and you say, it's not true, it's not true. Somebody come, that's not true, it's not true. I'm a nobody, I'm mamish, I'm a garnish, you don't even know about. Afshe bevada yoda ki hu adas shall call Yisrael. Moshe couldn't do what he did if he didn't know who he was. It was impossible. Moshe didn't know that Hashem chose him, not anybody else. Why did he fight Korach? Korach said, Moshe said, oh, you're right, I'm retiring, you take over. You can't be a leader like that. He says, Moshe knew that he was the das of Klal Yisrael. He was the das, is the koyach hadas, the consciousness, the perception of Klal Yisrael. He knew that. How can he be Anav Ma'od Mikol Adam Asher? I could say maybe Anav from certain people. Anav Ma'od Mikol. Everybody he saw was Anav. The pshat is now you can understand. Moshe understood better than anybody else this truth. Because he was Moshe, like we learned many times, the dveikus of Moshe coming from the water, Minamayim Mishisiyu, the Leviathan that we spoke about. Because he was Moshe, he understood this better than anybody else. That's why he was more humble than any person in the world. So other people are not so humble. When you become Moshe, who's greater than everybody, he's also more humble than everybody. What made Moshe the greatest person in the world was that he understood that he's a conduit for infinity, so he became infinite. That's how Taki became the greatest person. It's not pshat. Even though he was great, he was also a nice guy. He was humble. No, it's his Anav Ma'od that is one with his greatness. It's the Magbiya Shvalim Admonim, not pshat. You're a shuffle, even though you're great. It's the shiflus that is the ultimate greatness. The shiflus that comes with that greatness. And that is greater even than all your milas. Because it puts the milas in context, and it gives the milas the koyach of elikus, the koyach of godliness. You versteht? This is what humility is. Humility never means you look at yourself and you don't appreciate who you are. Every person has milas, every person has tchunas hanef, every person has characteristics, virtues, great things. Every person has a mission. If you don't appreciate who you are, you can never fulfill your mission. If a person has certain chushim, certain kaiches, you can never fulfill them. Another never means you delegitimize yourself and undermine your resourcefulness. It means you have to be honest with your chesroinus, but you also have to be honest with your milas. Just like a person has to know their flaws, they also have to know their milas, their qualifications. If not, it's a similar chesaron. And shiflus another never means to undermine that. What does it mean? It means to understand you're a messenger. You're a conduit. You're a shliach of the Rebbeinu Shalom. It comes from him, it's his gifts. And as it says, the Balatanya writes somewhere that Moshe Rabbeinu also felt that if somebody would have been given all the gifts that he had, perhaps that person may have maximized it more. That's why he didn't only feel humble stam, Anav Ma'od Mikol Adam Asher Pnei Adam, even if he looked at a person. He said, if this person would have had all my gifts, perhaps he would have maximized them more. So he even had that sense of humility in the presence of other people. Mikol Adam. And Ha'adam, Mikol Ha'adam. In other words, there was no exception. Every person on the face of the earth, Asher Pnei Adam, Moshe could look at him. As they say, Begovai Nayim. What do they say in Hebrew? He could, Yechol Daberim Kol Echad Begovai Nayim. How do you say it in English? It's a good expression, huh? No, like a real, he could just look at the person with full respect. Usually you would expect when Moshe Rabbeinu was having a conversation with somebody, it was like, don't even think you're getting close to me. This sense of condescending, and for good reason. Who was on a mountain for 40 days? You were on the mountain for 40 days. I was on the mountain. He was on the mountain for 40 days. But it never touched him. It never got to him. If it would have gotten to him, he could have never been Moshe.
Don't we learn the opposite at the beginning in Bereshis where it says Yazov, Ish es Aviv Vesimo? So you have to detach yourself from the source, not like a leaf.
V'davak be'ishtoi. who was Adam and Chava were originally one. So that's going back to the original source. Adam and Chava were one. A father and mother are there to help the child to be able to go back to Chava and become one with their original source. It's a training ground.
Meaning that they were originally...
Adam and Chava were originally one and then separated, yeah. The Ramban writes in Bereshis, why is it that only man and woman were created this way? All the animals were created as couples. Male horse, male bull, female cow, because that's how they were created. Male lion, female lioness. You had two species, Zachar and Nekeva, right, like we have by the Teva, and then they procreated. The only exception is Adam and Chava. Adam and Chava were created lechatchila as one, right, mamish one, bara oisai, and then he went to sleep, and there was a whole surgical decoupling. They were like Siamese twins, du partzufim, and then he separated them. So the Ramban says, very fascinatingly, because if it would have been the other way, then the only purpose of marriage would be procreation. The only purpose of marriage would be to bring in a new generation, but not for the unity itself. Adam and Chava were created as one, so that when the husband and the wife come back together, it's not a union, it's a reunion. The unity itself is significant. It's not just the purpose of having children. On the contrary, because this is their ultimate self, therefore they can bring a new generation into the world. So it's a whole different idea about marriage as a result of this type of creation. So v'hayu lebasar echad, because they were echad. They were originally echad. That's when the Ramban explains. It has a lot of application, especially for this generation, when the concept of marriage is starting to be understood less and even less.
So the real source of life is, you're saying, in the
Adam and Chava, yeah. When I do chuppahs, I always start off, we're not at a union, we are at a reunion. The union already happened a long time ago, before I was the MC of this chuppah. Happened a very long time ago. This is a reunion. The Balatanya has a maimah, he says somewhere, interesting word. He says that the reason this chasana is such a great simcha, what's the big simcha? There's a lot of happy moments in life, yeah? Why is a chasana such a big simcha? So some people would say because it's the beginning of the next generation, right? Which is true, it is the beginning of the next generation. But you'll see, for example, when you have a child, it's mamish the beginning of the next generation. There's also a simcha, neka shalom zacha, with a bris, a kiddush, but it's not like a chasana. So if the whole simcha of the chasana is just because it's the potential for the new generation, when the actual new generation comes in, so man echt machen a chasana, yeah? So by the chassan they have vachnachtak. Some people spend on it more than a wedding, I see. But, so this truth is that he says there's something very deep about it. He says, imagine two people who were best friends, mamish best friends, and then they were separated. And they were separated for decades. And then they came back together. He says it's a tremendous simcha. This is one of the deepest simchas in life. So he says that the two souls were really one before they were born. And then they were separated. And the chuppah, they reunite. Says that's a tremendous simcha. So that's coming back to your shayrish, to the achdus. Fakert, if you stay with your father and mother, you remain half. You're a wonderful person, but you remain half. Yeah. So therefore, Moshe could be anav ma'od mikol adam. Im kein af shebevada yesh b'chol avodah nekuda min ha'adam ba'atzmei v'hu haratzon. Even though it's true that in every avodah there's a nekuda that comes from you yourself, and that's one thing: your ratzon, your desire. Desire, like we learned many times, is keser. It's even deeper than chachma. The ratzon, the desire is, if I want, I do. Ein lecha davar amid b'fnei haratzon. That's the nekuda that comes from the person. It's called choice. That in every situation of life, I have a choice. The choice is I'm going to be a victim, or I'm going to rise up to my true potential at that time. And this, kivayachal, at least on the surface, Hashem doesn't mix in. Hakal b'dei shamayim, chutz miyir shamayim. The choice you have to make at every moment. Yeah. He says, mikol makayim, a nikir mizeh la'adam klal leda, kama yesh ba'avedasa me'atzma. This is not something a person can say, okay, this I get credit for. This is not something that's nikir, that's recognizable. V'rak hakol me'Hashem yizbarach. Ve'eich yuchal lehizgoyes b'mesha einay shaloi. Even the ratzon, the ability to be able to choose, also is a gift. That's also a gift. And that nikuda that we taka attribute to the person himself, he says it's a nikir. It's not recognizable to be able to say, this is really my credit, it's my ratzon. One never knows how much God is truly involved in every nikud of a person's life, even as I'm making those courageous choices. You know, he may be standing right there. Yeah, go, run. So now I suddenly,
It's not us. It's even.
He doesn't say clearly. In other words, he says, Ein nikim mizeh leida kama yesh ba'avedoseh me'atzmei, ha'kakel ma'Hashem yizbarach.
It's also a gift. If it's a gift, it's not a free choice.
Why not? It's a gift to be able to have free choice.
No, wait a second. Well, that's not complicated. Is it gift or it's a? If it's ours or not.
Who can?
I want to be wrong here. I want to make sure I'm wrong.
He says, Rak HaKol Ma'Hashem Yizbarach. He says two things. Rak HaKol sounds like everything is a gift, and also a nikir. It's very. These are things that are so subtle. You know, we're. Yeah. So how can a person be arrogant about something that's completely not his? Yeah, a person inherited billions and billions of dollars, and then they walk around saying, yeah, you know what I accomplished in my life? It's a joke. Now, even though a person has to develop, Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't given everything. He was given the potential, but you have to develop the potential. That's why he says there's a rotzah. You have to develop it. If a person doesn't develop it, you could be the most skilled athlete potentially. But if you're not training, you could be the most skilled dancer, the most skilled writer, the most skilled scientist, the most brilliant person. If you don't develop it, nothing is going to happen. The talents will remain latent and dormant and die. That's where you need avodah. That's where you need the ratzon. But that the person should become arrogant with that. He says, Eich yuchal lehizgoyes b'mesha einay shaloi. V'hageyes atzmoi hu hasimin shel shafel b'emes. The greatest sign to a person of how lowly he is when he's feeling arrogant. Then he has to know, ooh, I've lost it. Now I'm in my lowest state possible. That's why Chazal say that the Metzora has to take the cedar and the ezev. So we asked, if the point is humility, what do you have to bring in now the cedar? That's the past. He says, what is the ezev? What is the humility? Not stam be a humble person. Understand that what makes you so low, what turned you into a tailas and an ezev was the eres. Without the errors, there's no ezev. It's not stam be a humble person. It's appreciating that the greatest humiliation in life is when you start feeling superior to others, arrogant, haughty, narcissistic, completely self-absorbed and self-centered. That is the greatest humility in life. It's not a separate thing. The errors is what makes the ezev. When you understand that, that's the beginning of the healing. When a person understands that.
It's not feeling, it's action.
Action, yeah. Conviction and action. I mean, it's a value that leads to action.
Can you give me a snapshot? I don't see how the cedar fits in. I understand the concept.
The greatest humiliating thing in the world for a person is that he's arrogant. So when you want to underscore humility, you bring in the ezev, because that's the way, the type of humility we're talking about here is that he has to appreciate how humiliated he became as a result of the cedar.
To motivate him to
The
real height.
Yeah.
He picked the wrong mountain.
He picked the wrong mountain.
Got it. Good.
You want to inspire him to achieve real height, real greatness. Tzaddik ke'erez balavon and yizke, like a great cedar tree.
Wow, yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
Shminis shebeshminis, yeah. You understand? You want to inspire him to be really great. You don't want him not to be great. But what type of greatness? His greatness was the greatness, right? Was a type of haughtiness that made him the most humiliating creature.
Right. He was wrong.
He picked the wrong type of greatness. Yeah. So you bring in both, for both. But for the positive and for the negative. For the negative, in the sense, this is what made me such a lowly creature, this type of arrogance. This is how I could feel lowly now. You understand? On the other hand, there's a type of humility that will make me into the greatest person. Moshe Anav Moed, yeah.
The only way to achieve that is through Anova.
Yeah, that is Anova. It's not only achieve it, that is what Anova is. Anova is the greatest greatness, because that is Anova.
I find this is the problem with most of the good learners in yeshivas. That they don't understand what humility is. They think arrogance is ego.
Right. Right. There's two types of egos. There's an ego of being self-aware so you could fulfill your mission.
Yeah, who you are.
Who you are. Aware, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess there's self-consciousness, self-awareness. Or somebody once said there's self-awareness and there's being aware of the self. Very big difference.
in your mind.
Just observing, and speaking of words, I don't think it's said over in so many words. If they don't speak much.
Say it good.
All the way around doesn't work.
I don't know how you can understand Sfas Emes if you don't learn Alter Rebbe's Torah. And the Moira Nayim too, it's...
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.